Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. Today I'm sitting down with another founder that's trying to enhance DeFi, I think, and make it easier for more people to get involved. I'm sitting down with Shaun, or Blackbird, from Pondora. I'm looking forward to finding out a bit more about this and what these guys are bringing to the table. Shaun, thanks for taking the time to come on. I appreciate it.
Hey Paul, yeah, thanks so much for having me. Excited to share what we're doing with Pandora.
All right, so look, let's start it off, I suppose, with yourself, who you are, the high-level intro, and then we're going to get into Pandora and everything you're working on there.
Sure, yeah. So I got into Cardano easily 4+ years ago, mostly just into the tech, and I started working with a small team, building alongside various projects. Eventually, we started working on our own solutions, and that kind of formed the basis of what Pandora is today. So for the last three years almost, in March, we'd be working on it for 3 years now in March. And yeah, very excited to finally release what we've been building behind the scenes. Very exciting.
Yeah, it's a long time building, and there's a testnet has recently come out, but for people who mightn't have heard of it, I mentioned DeFi at the start and making it easier, but can you give the high level of what Pandora actually is for the user, and then we'll get into some of the intricacies in it then.
Sure. So the best way to explain it is the conventional dApp on Cardano. It's usually built for a specific purpose. So whether it's a DEX or NFT marketplace, there's kind of one thing that it's meant to do. With Pandora, we took the approach of building a general purpose smart contract that allows you to interact with any number of different protocols more efficiently. And that unlocks kind of unique abilities like being able to deploy your assets across multiple marketplaces, multiple DeFi protocols, all at the same time. So it's a whole new way to interact with Cardano. It's a whole new way to interact with your assets that you regularly trade. And it's more efficient, it's cheaper, and unlocks new features like being able to manage them with one transaction in bulk. So yeah, it's the very first time you use it, it's quite of a mind-blowing event when you can see that you can click once and 10,000 assets can be managed. And that's kind of the gist of what we're trying to achieve, is to elevate the user experience for the average dApp user, as well as bring those in other ecosystems to Cardano with this better experience.
Okay, you didn't say much there, but there's still a lot to dive into for me to get an understanding. I suppose on a high level, basically, instead of having my funds in a wallet and me interacting individually with dApps, I deposit my funds into a smart contract and I interact with the dApps from there, is it?
Yeah, so compared to like a conventional dApp, there is that extra step where before being able to interact like normal, you deposit your assets into a smart account, which we call the Pond. And that's where the magic kind of happens. So because your assets are now at a smart contract instead of in your wallet, all the extra features like being able to automate certain transactions or being able to manage intents instead of the assets themselves, that's what now becomes possible. And every feature we've built leverages that idea.
Okay, one word you said there was intents, actually. I've heard a few people mention that lately. My understanding of that is that I place an order to sell token X to token Y. I could then have intents set that when that happens, that it takes the proceeds from that and does something else with them. Then is it that I don't have to wait for that to settle, and then my wallet would recognize it then, but I can set it to be waiting for that action? Is it?
More or less, yes. So a good way to explain it is, let's say you want to trade a set amount of tokens for another set amount of tokens. Right now, you need to actually send those tokens to the contract that's going to be responsible for facilitating that transaction. With Pandora, instead of sending the tokens and your intent, you simply send the intent by itself. So you no longer need to move the assets around. It's only when that actual transaction gets resolved that the assets themselves need to move. And when you look at transactions on Cardano, the most expensive operation is moving around assets, whereas intents themselves can be represented by a much smaller footprint. And that allows us to do things like define those intents, send them, distribute them at scale, and in new ways. So for an example, you can actually create intents with messages. So you don't even need to sign a transaction. You can simply sign a message saying, I want to buy X amount of tokens for this price. And we can use that message to actually enable a transaction on your behalf. So if you look at an example where DEXs that currently use batches, usually you send those funds to the batcher then performs the transaction on your behalf. With a Pandora model, you could do the same thing, but you eliminate the first transaction. So the batcher still performs the transaction on your behalf, but what you're sending to the batcher is not a whole new transaction, but just the intent to do so. So it's a lot more efficient, saves tons of fees, and it saves a lot of time, which is probably worth more. And if you just look at 80 to 90% of the activity that happens on chain, it tends towards those intents more than the actual transfer of assets. So it's quite a significant improvement overall.
Okay, I like that. Currently, without something like that, I could assign my funds to one transaction, so I could put in a limit order for one thing. But potentially with this, my understanding is that I could say these are 4 tokens I would like to buy once they hit a certain price, but I could use the same capital that then whichever one hits first gets executed. Could things like that be done?
Exactly. So because intents are now separated from the underlying assets, you can now create unlimited intents. Usually, because they're bundled on existing tabs, you hit transaction size limits, and there's a limit to how much you can actually store alongside that asset. But because we've got intents completely separated, you can now horizontally scale that in a sense. So, for example, if you're listing something for sale, you can list it for sale in any number of different prices and ask for different tokens. So whether it be ADA or stable coins or even meme coins, you can now exchange, you set up all those intents at the same time, and the first one to be accepted is the one that gets resolved. So not only is it far more capital efficient, because now you can use the same liquidity across any number of different operations, but it's just more flexible for the user. There's no opportunity cost to now opt into those different options.
Okay, I like that. And I suppose from the question will come on a security basis from people is that, like, obviously if I hold the funds in my wallet, I'm the only one can control them. You have it all in a smart contract. I presume that's all audited, and what's the security behind that?
Yes, so obviously we audit everything that we work on. We are in the process of auditing features as we add them, but the underlying smart contract has been audited already. From a security perspective, it's actually no different. So when the funds are in your wallet, it's only your key that allows you to unlock it. It's only your private key. When your funds are in the smart account, it's built in such a way that it's only your key that's allowed to lock it. So there isn't a fundamental difference in the risk profile associated there. The only time that risk profile changes is when you add an intent to that asset. So if you say, I want to sell it for this price on this marketplace, then you are increasing that surface area. But that's no different to taking your asset and listing it on a marketplace. The only difference being you having to actually move the asset as well. So if you compare the two models, there's no difference in security. This model just kind of gives you more flexibility as a user and, all the benefits I've mentioned already.
Okay, and I suppose this out of interest for myself is, how do the intents work? So I know you sign them, but they don't actually get submitted to the chain. So how are they picked up then by the contract, or where do they sit waiting to be picked up if they're not signed on chain?
So there's 2 types of intent. Some of them are on chain, just like the existing model, but they just sit at a different contract address. So that just allows you to manage them independently, but they are still on-chain as conventional dApps do. Then the off-chain intents that function as messages, those just get included in the transaction building process. So it's kind of like in the same way that you provide your signature to a transaction right now, you're providing those messages in place of that signature. So there's once again no fundamental difference in the journey of a user to submit that data to the transaction.
Okay, and is this all, you mentioned batchers, just for people who might be familiar with most dexes on Cardano, there is a batcher, well, AMM dexes anyway, there's a batcher sitting in the middle due to how the UTXO and AMMs with the pools work, and that executes the orders and batches up multiple ones to execute at once. With the smart contract that you have, is there a batcher side to execute that, or is there an off-chain part of it that executes when it sees certain price points or certain activities hit?
Yeah, so batcher, there's a bit of a connotation with batcher because there's been various implementations over the years, and they all kind of function in different ways with different trade-offs. We've built something called DORA, so that's the Decentralized Order Routing Aggregator, and that serves as kind of the backend to the way the smart account functions. A big purpose of the way we've architected this is to allow anyone to operate the batching or sequencing, whatever you want to call that function. So we're launching a token that will allow token holders to operate that network. And that creates a decentralized mechanism for not only the order routing, but for some of the more advanced features like flash loans and arbitrage and nested routing. There's a lot of cool complex features that are now possible with this model, and it's important to keep that decentralized and open to all. So in terms of comparing it to existing batches, there are some similarities, but it's also very much a hybrid model. So if you as a user want to interact with a sale or a trade that's listed on the smart contract, you can do so directly as well. So it doesn't break composition, which is a very big important factor in the design of this. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, you mentioned two things there. Remind me, the token, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but other use cases for this. So I've concentrated on trading. I'm interested in trading and DeFi and that side of things, but what else can this be used for? This type of model, you mentioned their flash loans. They're going to be possible with this?
Yes, so to be frank, any DeFi operation that currently exists on Cardano and some that are still in the works, we've already kind of built implementations for each of these. And these work with the smart account. So we've proven that it really is general purpose. So there aren't really any limitations in what you can do with the smart account because it functions just like a wallet would. It just leverages this abstraction. In terms of being able to, in terms of the new features that you'd be able to do, like flash loans, that's been possible on Cardano for forever. For those who don't know, a flash loan is just a loan that's paid back in the same transaction that it's taken out. And the one piece that's kind of missing with features like that is being able to give users the opportunity to take advantage of that without having to manually monitor the chain for opportunities. It's typically used for arbitrage. So the combination of our smart account and our DORA network means that we can actually build those opportunities into the way the network functions. So as a user, you can now simply opt into flash loans as an option without kind of any downside. So with a practical example, let's say you have a certain amount of ADA and you want to offer that out to generate yield. And there's various ways you could do that. You could offer it out as a loan. You could provide it as liquidity to a liquidity pool for a DEX. And flash loans are another example of what you could do. So with our model, you'd be able to basically assign that fixed amount of ADA to all of those opportunities at the same time. And via an automated process powered by the DORA nodes, anytime those opportunities come about, those transactions can immediately be resolved on your behalf. And then the really cool part is once that loan completes, or once that flash loan is paid back, it immediately becomes available again for the same purposes. So you could kind of set and forget a bunch of rules on how you'd like that ADA to be used in DeFi, and let it basically work for you overnight. And that's something that's not possible with the current manual approach of opting into each of these opportunities separately.
Okay, I'm thinking from my own perspective, I'm looking forward to being able to jump into this and try out you don't have to worry about creating the bots ourselves and manage different aspects and excuse me, watch the chain and different things like that. But there's a lot there. How does the UI, UX look for users? Will it be a simple, I don't know, there's so much there, drag and drop, or how does that fit? Or how do you present all of that to the normal DeFi user?
So it's taken a long time to kind of, we've gone through so many versions over the years of trying to find a good way to represent various opportunities throughout the ecosystem in an easy and intuitive way. So what we have today is basically on the main website, there's a section for each kind of dApp. So you'll get your NFT marketplace, you'll get your lending, you'll get your DEX, and in each of these sections, you can see the assets that are in your smart account. So as an example, let's say you've got a few NFTs that are present in your smart account. You could go onto the marketplace and you could see that they are there, and you can list them for sale. Then you can shift over to the lending part, and those same NFTs will be there. And you can say, I'd also like to offer this as collateral for a loan. And then you can use those same NFTs in transactions for the lending part. So basically, depending on what you want to do, your assets that are in your smart account are always available. They remain liquid. You can withdraw them at any time, and you can opt into various opportunities throughout the ecosystem. And as we extend features, as we build new features, it's basically just another tab on the site. And then you can use any assets that are currently available in your pond in each of these opportunities. So that's how we've approached it. And users that have been testing it so far on testnet it's been an overwhelmingly positive experience. Nothing but good feedback so far. And yeah, that's the approach we've taken, and I think it's a good choice so far.
Yeah, I think that's something that's so important for people coming in, and to encourage more people to get involved in DeFi in Cardano. There's a huge community there, but there's only a small percentage gets involved in DeFi. And I think the complexities or the worry about, you see all these different scares and hacks and different things out there, has people a bit worried, and they're willing to sit on the sidelines earning interest on the ADA that they have just sitting there in their own wallet. So I think the easier we can make it for people to get involved in DeFi, the better it is, and the more opportunities that creates for everybody, because the bigger the pool of people using it, then the more opportunities. But this isn't just Cardano, is it? You're looking outside of Cardano too?
Yes, right. So with the recent hard fork in Plutus V3, there's been more capability to interact with other chains. And so we've been actually trying to launch for quite a while, but when new features come out and we see an opportunity to maybe add a few features here and there, we kind of take it. And that's part of the reason why we've kind of delayed the launch quite a few times already. But what we've done in recent months since the hard fork is take the existing smart account and add the capability to interact with wallets from any other major blockchain. So whether it be Solana or Ethereum or Bitcoin or even Sui, that's gaining popularity, there's compatibility there where those wallets can interact directly with the smart account. And the only thing that makes that process kind of clunky is the fact that even if someone connected that wallet, they would still need ADA to be able to cover transaction fees. But thanks to our kind of unique mechanism with the off-chain intents, those users can literally jump in, interact with the DEX without paying any fees. And the only thing they kind of need is some kind of asset to get started. So what makes sense there is a stablecoin bridge, which is one of the more centralized services we're working on. So the user journey there would be, let's say you are a regular user of Solana and you've got USDC in your Solana wallet. You could connect the wallet directly on Pandora, see your USDC balance. With a few clicks, you could exchange that for USDM on Cardano. So, because it's a stable coin, that's something that is quite acceptable. You can always exchange it for $1. And then you can immediately use that USDM across Cardano DeFi. And so we believe that creates a very powerful onboarding experience for users in other ecosystems to test the waters of Cardano DeFi with minimal friction. So that's our approach to kind of the cross-chain problem. Bridging will obviously also help with recent announcements, but that's a separate problem, I think, and that's something that can kind of augment the effort more than be an alternative to it. It's exciting to imagine what might happen on Cardano if we get this right.
Yeah, I really like that aspect, and it's like we're always looking for more people to take notice of Cardano and see what we can do. And I think apps like this that are innovative, that are doing things different and making it easier for people to come in and try out Cardano, I think that's brilliant to have, and making it as easy as possible. Stablecoin bridge definitely, I think, is a great way to go. And if we ever do get Babel fees fully working on Cardano, I think that definitely helps. I know there's different projects have implementations of it now, which is great to see. I'd love to see it at the ledger level, which is what kind of been waiting for a few years now. But it's good to see progress like that, and things like that really make it easier for dApps like yourselves that are building them, for users that are coming in that can use the chain without having to buy ADA. And for people worried that ADA isn't used, underneath it all, ADA is still used for the transactions. It's just the person making the transaction on the top level doesn't have to pay ADA. They can pay something else, and then there's a mechanism under that to convert to ADA to pay the transaction fee. We mentioned the nodes and the token a few times. You guys do have an upcoming token sale. Where does the token fit with all of this? You referenced it being part of the node network, but how does all of that work?
Sure. So the token is something that we kind of went back and forth on a lot. Initially, the idea was to try to build it without the need for a token. But as the model kind of matured, it made more and more sense, especially when it got to more complex DeFi operations, that you really need to decentralize the process of order resolution, not really batching, but more order matching. And that's where the token came in. So what the token allows is it's a utility token that powers the node network that runs on the smart contracts. You can think of it as a simulated proof of stake network, where instead of using something like partner chains or specialized software, it's simply a script that uses the smart contracts that power the smart account to validate the number of tokens you hold. And that, in a sense, secures the network, where it incentivizes that only a certain amount of users can earn fees from the protocol. So the kind of long-term idea is, if you've got 50% of the token supply, you should be able to generate on average 50% of the revenue from the platform fees. So it's a way to completely decentralize ownership and operation of the network. And if we, as the current dev team maintaining the product, disappear, Pandora would live on with these open source tools. So that's where the motivation and purpose of the token comes from. It also enables some cool features from a user perspective. So we've made the requirement for running these nodes a mixture of the responsibility of those who opt to actually run the software versus those who are actually using the software. So to give you an example, let's say you require 1 million Pond tokens to run a node, then but that cost is a bit too high for you as a node operator. Then you could potentially only run half of that capacity, and then depend on users who hold the remaining tokens to basically fill in the gaps. And in that case, you limit your opportunity to which transactions you can settle, but you then have the opportunity to do it without requiring as much of a balance. So I hope that makes sense. But the underlying idea is you create a distributed network that's incentivized both from a user and an operator perspective to achieve something that just works in a pretty seamless way.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. And me as an SPO on Cardano and I am getting into running nodes on other areas now on projects. It's definitely something I'll be interested in looking more into the details when it comes out. But I presume it would just be I have to set up a server that runs whatever software you have, and then if I have enough of the Pond token, then I become a validator essentially in the network or helping process the transactions. Is it?
Pretty much. And if you think about like some of the features I haven't mentioned, that's not so much on our roadmap, but they serve as extensions to the existing features we've built. So that involve things like zero knowledge and layer 2 scaling. The architecture that we've kind of envisioned here leverages those technologies quite well. The downside of those technologies is that it does require additional computing resources and storage resources. So the purpose of the node is kind of twofold. One, to decentralize operation of this transaction resolution, but also to decentralize the resources required. Because if we look at, as we scale these features further and further, make use of zero knowledge proofs, the computational cost becomes significant. And that's where, it can be kind of considered decentralized infrastructure in a sense as well, purely because you are running a piece of software on your hardware and you're contributing those resources to the network. And it's quite accessible. The idea is that you should be able to just download a binary from the GitHub releases and run it on your PC. And you reference your address that holds those tokens, and that validates basically that you are allowed to run it. So if you compare it to like setting up a stake pool, it should be far more accessible. You shouldn't have to do a lot, of the key setups and all the extra maintenance involved. It should be as simple as the average everyday user being able to just run a binary on their PC.
Okay. Yeah, and when you say on their PC, do you mean people could run this locally, or would it be a cloud Linux-based server that people should run this on?
So it will just be, it can be something as simple as an EXE on a Windows machine.
Okay.
It doesn't require any specific platform, because ultimately all it's doing is building the transactions, referencing the smart contracts, and making sure that the address that it's been configured to use is holding the required tokens. So we'll build it for Linux initially, but then it should be super portable.
Okay, that's good. It's good to hear. I'm watching the time now as we're getting on, and I could keep talking about all the different options you have, but I'm conscious of people watching to get all the information. So token sale is coming up the end of this week, I think. That's one of the first ones on Minswap, isn't it?
Yes, I believe we'll be the first to use the new Minswap IDO. So I'm looking forward to just being involved in that innovation as well.
Yeah, I will leave the links to that one down below. But is there anything that we didn't cover today that maybe common questions you get or things that should have been highlighted for users? I'm hoping they've got a good introduction to what Pandora is and some of what's going to be possible. It's definitely something I can do tutorials on once it's live. Actually, that's a question. When would this hit mainnet?
So mainnet is something we've been trying to to push for many months, and there always ends up being something that, let's do this first, or okay, the hard fork's coming up, let's wait until after the hard fork. And now obviously there's another hard fork that's coming up pretty soon. I'd say that we are hopeful before the end of the year. It does depend on a few factors in terms of when certain audits complete. So we are waiting on one more audit. And then it also comes down to what the community wants. A big part of why we are launching the token so soon is that we can hopefully launch Mainnet alongside governance. And a lot of the decisions that go into how Mainnet runs will be up to the token holders. So there isn't a set date yet. There's a hopeful kind of time period of before the end of the year. But nothing set in stone right now. Ultimately, what we want to do is just make sure that once we do go to Mainnet, that things are smooth, that all the testnet bugs have been worked out, and that the experience will be great, especially for those coming from other ecosystems using it for the first time. Because I think that's critical. That kind of first impression has to be impeccable.
And just on the token, users don't have to hold the token to use the platform. The token is for people running nodes in the network. So anybody can come in and use it and take advantage of the features it has.
Of course, not at all. So yeah, it would make no sense to restrict users to require holders, because you want people to use it. But holders of the token as users do get benefits such as reduced fees and access to certain features that might benefit from restricted access. So if you can think of a feature where you might only want, let's say, 1,000 people participating because of the way that DeFi feature works, then the creator of that module or feature can utilize the network of Pond holders to create a restriction of that feature. So premium features would function like that, where only certain users can use it. And the underlying model of how protocol fees work also benefit from holding the Pond token. But there will never be a case where only holders should be able to use it. That said, a big kind of purpose of the foundation that's behind launching the token is to promote building on top of this kind of tech and standard, to promote innovation, to promote liquidity being shared between dApps in the ecosystem. And so there will be grants for devs and dev teams that want to build on top of it. And because it's a completely extensible framework for building dApps, there may be features released by those teams that maybe only are restricted to holders of certain tokens. So the Pandora kind of project isn't really a monolith. It's more a collection of many different dApps and a smart account. And no one can really say what will be built on it long term. But as far as what our team has worked on so far, there's no restrictions there.
Okay, that's something I suppose I hadn't thought when we started this. First is other people building and what features they can build on top of this, and being able to say, me as part of different things I'm working on, I could build something on top of it, and that could be accessible to, I could define then who's able to use them features, is it?
Exactly. And our idea with this is just to put forward a better way to build dApps. And what we'd really like to do is for this to become at least a starting point for a standard. Because if you look at, let's say we've got 10 different DEXs right now, instead of these various DEXs kind of fighting for liquidity, we could have a model where that liquidity is shared. And those DEXs could then specialize in certain features, but users that are using these DEXs could opt into those features using the same liquidity. And that's a very different model, which I believe works much better for the ecosystem as a whole. So that's kind of what we're trying to push with Pandora, is a way to build dApps where you aren't restricted to locking it at a specific address. Instead, you use the smart account, and the smart account then enables you to opt into these different features. So the way this works long term is to get devs involved, to get teams involved, hopefully to upgrade their existing dApps to be compatible, and many dApps already are compatible just by nature of composability. And yeah, it will all be open source, and we hope to see adoption of it.
Okay, yeah, it's my head. There's lots of different potential ideas and things. We're definitely going to do follow up calls on this to talk about it, and I can do tutorials and everything. Even things like yield aggregators, you could potentially have it where you have the yield being moved or the funds being moved around the different dexes to take advantage of the yield. If the contract's able to monitor the different returns that are available on a daily basis, and it could automate that whole process. So there's probably hundreds or thousands of different opportunities like that I look forward to seeing. But any closing thoughts from yourself or anything for this one? And again, I'll leave links down below for anyone who wants to dive into testnet or reading more for yourself. The community, where's the best place to go to keep up to date?
I think a lot of the information gets shared on our Discord. So joining the Discord, being a part of that community, we've been building for many years, and it's mainly the Discord community that has been up to date and been building alongside us in a sense. So that's definitely the place to be. Otherwise, in the same place, you can get access to the testnet and start playing around for yourself, start giving feedback, see firsthand how the smart account works. It's always fun to see the reaction when someone uses it for the first time and kind of just, are you sure this is real? So yeah, please join us on the Discord and give us feedback. But otherwise, yeah, just thanks for having me, and it's great chatting about it.
Yeah, look, I really enjoyed it. As I said already, I think this will only be the first of many calls we'll probably do exploring this type of thing and what's possible, and try and encourage other people to get involved even outside the Cardano ecosystem, people in the ecosystem to get involved and make it easier for them to use DeFi, but also for others to come from the outside and look at the opportunities that are there. And I think what needs to happen is a kick on what opportunities are there in terms of people being able to use yield within the ecosystem, because that encourages more people to come in from the outside and get involved to take advantage of that. And when they're here, that's when you try and show them what else is being built here on Cardano. But Shaun, thanks again for your time. Anyone watching, please do share it out. Check out all the links down below. I'll leave a link to the Discord, to the testnet, the website, and also the token sale coming up on Minswap. And thanks for watching. Subscribe if you're new. Shaun, we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much.